Well, hi everyone, it's Ben Hookway here with Relative Insight for another episode of Voices to Action. And this time I've got April Seifert from Sprocket CX. April's the CEO and founder. So welcome, April.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I know a lot of your crew, so this will be really fun.
Yeah, so our company is doing quite a lot of work in the States, largely around fan experience. But you've got a particular kind of angle on fan experience, which if you want to kind of just, in your own words, rather than have me butcher it, let's have you talk about what you do.
Yeah, talk about a funny situation from, I think back to my beginnings in sports as a fifth grade basketball player on my elementary school team who never scored a single point, to now working with some of the best professional sports teams in the industry. It's a little bit of a weird road, but bottom line is I'm a psychologist by training. So I really was raised in academic research, understanding human behavior from a psychological lens. And through my career, I've meandered and bobbed and weaved and found myself in professional sports and really fell in love with the opportunity of this industry. I haven't seen another industry that is driven by as much passion and nostalgia and identity and excitement and memories, and I could go on, as professional sports. So as a psychologist, that is just, a professional playground. And these days at Sprocket, we do a couple of things. So one, we work directly with teams, leagues, venues, partners, those types of folks to understand fans at a deeper level. And over the last, call it 8 to 10 years, we've worked really hard at understanding fandom. So historically, fandom has been measured, on a scale of 1 to 10. How big of a fan are you of your favorite team? That singular number is so reductive when you think about everything that goes into leading a person to follow a team, do some of the most irrational things in the name of supporting, their favorite team and players. And what we're focused on most recently is understanding truly from a psychological perspective what drives fandom. And how do we understand the very broad spectrum of sports fans and what brings them to their favorite team, leads them to cheer and come back and support and buy and attend?
So where did this start for you then? Was it you set your sights on sports and thought psychology was a way to get there? Or was it like psychology as a sort of vocation and a career, and then the sports opportunity popped up? Which way did it go?
Well, it actually started with analytics. I was in the research side of the psychological field. So I never did therapy or worked with clients or anything like that. I was always on the research and analytical side. I had normal jobs. I got really good at big data and machine learning and all of those other nerdy, data related things. And I ended up, going out on my own and starting to do some independent projects for a variety of different clients in a variety of different industries. And I happened to meet the team at the Minnesota Vikings at an analytics conference, a sports analytics conference. And this is years and years ago, they had just stood up their integrated data warehouse. And I had such a soft spot in my heart for the position they were in because, right, you've just spent a whole heap of money and you don't really have a lot that anybody in your business can see. It's just this container that holds all your data and there's really nothing to show for it. So I reached out to them and I said, I understand. I get where you're at. Keep going. I'm cheering for you. And they said, cool, come to the stadium. Let's chat and walk. And they were our first client. We ended up doing some work for them. And as I worked with them, the Denver Broncos, the Tennessee Titans, other folks, San Diego FC, I started seeing that there are very common factors that fans mention that lead them to follow their favorite team. And I wasn't seeing anybody measuring at that level with that precision what fandom actually is. So as a psychologist, I got super excited about this, what feels academic, but is still really fun in this industry. Yeah. And that's really what's fueling our work today.
So, okay, so let's talk about fandom, because we also had Pete Woodward. He used to run this for the LA Clippers. Yeah. So Pete talks about fandom as well. But in my experience, it's quite a nebulous kind of definition. So what's your sort of definition of fandom in this respect?
Yeah, I mean, fandom at a whole is what we all think of it as. It's the passion and excitement that we have for our favorite team or player or athlete. But when you start to deconstruct it, what I'm really interested in is, okay, cool, but why? Why are you a fan? So are you a fan because you remember watching matches and games with your grandpa and he got you into it and you're very nostalgic about it? Or are you really into the data and the stats and you want to argue about the plays that the coach is calling and what a ref may or may not have done? Or are you, this is the type of fan I am, are you in it for the vibes? It's so fun and you love sharing that experience with other people, with your family and your friends and on social media. Those are all, you can line people up in each of those categories and more, and they will all say they're a 9 out of 10 fan, a 10 out of 10 fan, but what they look like in terms of their behavior, what they want to engage in, and how you activate them and reach them, completely different. So, saying that we've got this set of people who are avid fans, they're 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, it's not good enough anymore in a world where people are getting very used to having an individualized experience in every other industry. And I'm excited to bring that to professional sports because I think, wow, the sky's the limit in this industry.
So you said professional sports there. So I used to live in America for like 6 years. So and I always tell certainly people who haven't really experienced college sports.
Oh man.
In the States.
Yeah.
My theory is actually college sports in the States and professional sports in the UK are much more similar than pro sports in the States and pro sports in the UK. For the reason is the community, you can't often move the franchise from one college to another, which you can with pro sports.
Right.
So is there a difference in your experience in fandom between a sort of pro franchise and a college team?
Yeah. So if you think about some of the things I mentioned, we measure 12 different drivers of fandom.
Right.
And if you think about, what you just mentioned, the geographic piece that connects people to their favorite team, there's something about living in that community. You go to college, if you have that traditional college experience, you live in the dorms and you're sort of snuggled in with all the other students, you're going to the games, you're living and breathing that college town that you're in. That regional pride and that sense of place is very strong in collegiate sports. You see that also in professional teams who have been in market for a long time. So when teams do shift and they do move to a different market, you lose that sort of deep set of roots that the team gets. And that's why this is so important, right? Because if you pluck a professional team and put them in a different market, fandom fundamentally changes. You need to rely on different things because you don't have that nostalgia, regional sense of place fueling your fandom anymore. But on the collegiate side, that's very strong. And the collective that you mentioned, collective is another thing that we measure. The collective nature of, a student section. I think we all probably have those memories of sitting in the student section at our college, whatever sport, games or matches. It's electric, and that really does get people excited. And then 2, I mean, for the colleges and universities who might be listening, what that fandom does for you is fundamentally different than in professional sports.
Yeah.
Because if you think about a college and university, what are they interested in? They want a really good, engaged alumni class.
Yes.
This is an amazing way to get that. You can't tell me that if you don't show a bunch of college kids a really good time and get them embedded in the brand of that college, that they're not going to be more supportive later on.
Yeah, I mean, I still, so I lived in DC for a while, and my first ever college sport experience was the Maryland Terrapins football team.
Nice.
So a friend of mine took me up saying, do you want to go and see the college team? And I literally thought I'd be one of 20 people standing on the sidelines behind a rope.
Oh, no.
It's really, because like in the UK, that's kind of what college sport is. And so, you know, I rocked up, and there were more people. That the stadium was bigger than, you know, the football team I support in Scotland, you know, professional team. So it was a real shock, actually. So I'm curious though, then, if we go back to this sort of fandom index, what drives a high score for fandom in college as opposed to what drives a high score in pro? Is there a difference?
There's not so much a difference, but it's a difference in those 12 factors. So I've mentioned a few of them now, right? I've mentioned nostalgia. I mentioned collective, regional. We also measure identity. You've probably met those folks who bleed and then they insert the color of their team. Or this is my husband and my neighbor, right? So my husband puts up his Nebraska Cornhuskers flag, and then my neighbor's University of Minnesota flag goes up after that, and they sort of wave them at each other over the fence. That sense of identity, stats and sport and player, all of those. So it isn't so much at an omnibus or an overall level what drives fandom, but what I'm more interested in is the collective of fans. What are those groups of people who are supporting your team? How numerous are they in each of those fan segments? And then knowing that, what do you need to do in order to activate them and keep them engaged and keep them coming? Because the set that I talked about right at the beginning of our conversation, you can find them in collegiate sports. I mean, there's a ton of, look at March Madness, right?
Yeah.
How much betting goes on in March Madness? The folks that take that really seriously are very stats and strategy driven fans. That happens at the collegiate level. It also happens at the professional level. And how we treat those fans is very different than how we're going to treat a fan who's coming to support that team because their family loves that team and they want to spend time in a way that everybody loves to spend time together in order to be with their family, a more social fan. So it isn't so much that there's a big difference. It's more that we need to get better at being precise about understanding what drives fans.
Interesting. And how do you do that then? How do you segment fans, either online or in stadium? Like, how is that surveying? Is that digital ID? Like, what's the mechanism for that?
Yeah. I mean, this is interesting, right? So I talked about professional sports being, I mean, we joke internally that it's one of the biggest passion economies that exists today. If you think about in the United States, professional sports is what, a $55-ish billion industry. And when you're in a psychological industry, psychologist who used to be a TA. So if you think back to your Psych 101 class, you probably learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And at the bottom of that was your basic needs. It's like food and shelter and safety and things like that. We don't sell any of that. We don't sell anything that people actually need to live. Yet, the factors that tend to predict purchases in that space, demographics, economics, those types of things, that's what we're using in professional sports to try to predict what fans are going to do and what's going to get them to take that next action. If you think about sports, we belong on that top of Maslow's hierarchy. We're more like belonging and excitement and self-actualization, sort of sometimes through those players that we follow. And so in the industry, we need psychological data, but we don't have it. And this gets to your question, because the reason why we don't have it is because it's really hard to get. We can't just go to somebody's ticketing platform and scrape the data that came from their ticket purchases and say, oh, great, this is somebody who attends often. That's akin to saying they're a 9 out of 10 fan. Why are they attending? What elements of that match are they interested in? So what we've had to do is at scale, actually, as we speak, we've got 4 studies running where we're collecting psychographic data from fans at scale, and then using machine learning on some other internal proprietary data that we have in order to predict the rest of the United States. So over time, we're getting smarter and smarter as to how to understand fandom at this more precise level. But truly, it starts with boots on the ground, talking to fans, scooping up this data that they are willing to give us. We can't get it any other way. And honestly, that's why we haven't had it until now.
Yeah. No, yeah, you got to make the effort to get the data. I mean, you said a couple of things that's really sort of fascinate me there at the top of Maslow's hierarchy. So, it's belonging to a tribe, like that's that kind of belonging thing. We're also starting to see people being fans of teams, not because of the team, but because of individual players.
Yes.
As well. So I'm just wondering how that is starting to affect strategies that teams are putting in place. So I said to Pete, who's another obviously expat in LA. So I've got a couple of friends I know who have actually joined coaching teams in the States from the UK, and they took them a while to adjust to 2 things. Number one, no promotional relegation. Which means there's more for the team. It means that performance sometimes is not the be all and end all.
Correct.
Yeah. So they might prioritize a poor performing but high profile player to get community reach and audience reach and so on, even though that might mean that the team isn't maybe going to perform in the right way. So they got over it. But things like that are kind of new. So can you maybe talk about how, the rise of player fandom, and whether that's in conflict with teams, what strategies do people have to, employ to adjust to that?
Yeah. Think about where that came from, right? If you even just focus on something like fantasy football.
Yeah.
We don't draft an entire team. You draft individual players, and suddenly with that, it's been around for quite a while now, but at the time, new way of engaging with sports, it changed the way that people think about and follow sports. So much more focused on players. A second force that we saw really impacting that is the impact of personal brands on social media. Think about how big of a reach an individual player can have if they're curating their social media personal brand. Heck, I can think of, wives and girlfriends of players who have bigger reach than, at times than the team does with certain types of fans. So the focus on players is really important. It is another factor that we measure, the degree to which you are a fan of. There's almost a hierarchy here, right? A fan of a player, a fan of a team, a fan of the sport.
Yes.
And we have to be able to connect to people in each of those layers. And when we look at player-focused fans, it's a little bit more of a brittle type of fandom. We saw this with LeBron in the US, or Messi is a good example, where they start to move between teams and you see them, at least to some extent, maybe you won't flip your allegiance entirely, but a bit of your time, money, and attention follows that player. And we have to be ready for that. But how are you ready for it if you don't know?
Yeah.
What's the degree to which that's impacting your fandom? And if you haven't been measuring it over time, how do you know it's increased? What's happening with, I'm in Minneapolis, so I got to talk about Anthony Edwards, right? And as he, famously in, I think it was last season, who was he talking to? Was it Charles Barkley who said like, oh, I've never been to Minneapolis and I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this, so I'm going to beat myself, but like, yeah, bring it. Okay, great. Bring your ass. And that became a huge thing. And now like, I think the Minnesota Department of Tourism adopted that as our unofficial slogan, like bring your ass to Minnesota. Those small moments, seemingly small moments, can make a really big impact. And individual players really can have a huge sway when we're measuring, eyeballs and attention and the amount of time somebody is spending. It can really impact. Messi, heck, like you might not even be a Miami fan, but you might go to a game just because you want to see him play. Yeah. And that's one game or one match that somebody else is not getting from you because you're going to watch him.
Okay, so so it's important. There's a lot of factors. It's quite complicated, but there's a fandom score that gets kind of, I guess, pulled together. Is there like a convincing correlation between like a high fandom score and financial performance of a team?
Yeah. What's really interesting is we don't actually calculate one score. So we do the whole 0 to 10 thing. We'll measure that too. Everyone's used to it, so let's definitely do it. We measure 0 to 100 on 12 different psychographic measures of fandom. And then you're placed into, based on your unique combination of your scores, each fan is placed into a set of sport agnostic fan segments that are industry standard. And when we look at the fan segments that drive revenue, now I'm talking globally revenue, not just ticketing, not just merch, but overall revenue. It's not the fans that you think. Time and time again, I've worked with teams where they've thought all that matters is winning. We have these fans who will call into the fan line. They'll be upset. They're very, very loud, and we're really worried about that. And then we measure their revenue that's associated with those fans, and it's not that high. Where we see it, crazy enough, is in a lot of the family, social, ambiance-related fans. Because these are, I'm going to stereotype a little, but that segment leans heavily toward women who historically have not been marketed to. I mean, I've got data right now running that I looked at 2 days ago that overwhelmingly, both men and women filling that survey out are saying that the professional sports industry markets to white men who are avid fans. And if you're anyone other than that, we're missing out on a ton of opportunity. So when we measure her, and again, I'm calling it her because it's used that way. When we measure her, the revenue potential that she has is so much higher because a lot of our partners are in categories that she's shopping, and a lot of our partners and media, etc., are in categories where she's making a lot of the buying decisions. So ticketing, maybe not, but that's a really insular way of looking at revenue and what all of us care about in the sports industry.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's I think the SBJ report earlier on this year had a really excellent set of data around the split of different revenue streams, but split by the different pro sports. So, the NFL, I think the TV deal is like well over half of the revenue. Yeah.
Yep.
But in hockey, the dominant revenue is actually bums on seats.
Yeah.
Sorry, but let's translate that for the Americans. So people sitting on seats.
Butts in seats.
Butts on seats.
Yeah.
So that's the dominant revenue stream in national hockey, actually. Whereas in the States, in NFL, it's TV and so on. But I guess I think what you're talking to also also underlines the point that, pro sports in America is entertainment, and they are up against other entertainment options for those people. That's the business they're in.
Yes. I just worked with a football team.
It's good.
Soccer team recently, who, when we talked to fans and said, hey, what's if you're not at a match, and these are huge fans who say this is their favorite team, whatever, if you're not at a match, where are you? The beach.
Interesting.
And so you compete with the other teams in your league, you compete with the other teams in your geographic area, which, if you pause there, that's why it's shocking to me. Now, I have a retail background. I led a data science team at Target Corporation for a chunk of years. And I was really used to thinking about things from that retail lens. And we had our own internal segmentation at Target that we used for a lot of our internal strategy and a lot of our merchandising and buying decisions and things like that. But when it came time to compare ourselves to the other options that our consumers that we were up against, we can't use our internal segmentation to help us understand who are our at-risk consumer segments, who are the ones that are very sticky and we can rely on them. You need something that is more standard, where we can say, here's where Target is, here's where Walmart is, here's where Amazon is, and this is how our mix of consumers differs, and how we can be really surgical about who we're going after and how. We don't have that in the sports industry.
Yeah, interesting. That's what
think about any, like Minneapolis, again, in terms of giant cities, we're a pretty small market, yet we've got 5 professional men's teams here, and they're all competing for eyeballs with each other. How do you know whose fans are really good targets for you to go after? And what do you have to say to them if you're the Minnesota Wild, for example? If you want to get more bums in seats, who are you going after, and what do you need to say to them in order to get somebody to give you a try and see that your game day is actually electric and amazing? You need this type of data.
So let's talk about, I'm really interested in the segment stuff there, because so obviously Relative Insight being, language experts.
Yeah.
I've been involved in projects with customers where they had standard segmentation databases. And so, they'd gone to a lot of trouble to sort of have these discrete segments who they believed were all different based on either the demographic or other data that they've got. And then, what we do is we did a few projects where open-end questions went out to these segments, getting their views on the product or their lifestyle or segments or their views on whatever, just getting them to talk about it.
Yeah.
And what was every single time, the segments that people thought were going to be completely different in their responses were not different. And actually the differences in the language were across segments which they hadn't actually defined.
Tell me more about that. That's actually really interesting.
Yeah. So what we had was the one I'm thinking about is a sort of pay TV type service. I can't really talk about who.
Sure. No. That's fine.
But what they did was this is all around ad responses. So what they had was, okay, we think that this group and this group are clearly going to have different responses to this ad. And everything Relative Insight does is a comparison. So basically what we do is compare 2 language sets. We tell you what is significantly different between them. And in most cases, the differences that they thought were going to be there were not there. So let's say it was across, they thought there would be a big difference in age. And age was to the response to the ad. Turned out there wasn't. What we can do is kind of figure out where the linguistic differences actually lie, and then figure out the metadata point that axis is on. That makes sense?
Yep. Yeah.
And it tended to be more regional than it did age.
That's really interesting.
So, I mean, this went, I think the thing about segmentation databases in big brands, my experience is that 50% of people think it's amazing and accurate, and the other 50% of people think it's a complete waste of time and inaccurate.
Yeah.
So it can be a bit disruptive what we do. But the way people express themselves is normally a much more accurate indicator about what they actually feel and what they're going to do than the sort of easy to get data.
I agree.
Yeah.
I feel like we're kind of beating the same drum, right? It's because what I've noticed with your platform, and I've used your platform in some of the work that I've done, and what's been really interesting is if we were to look at just demographic segments, which can we all remember the days, gosh, when was it? In the early 2000s where everybody was targeting millennial moms, and like, I can't roll my eyes for it enough. I mean, we've learned since then, it was well-intentioned, but
Yeah.
those demographic elements that I think we both made the point in this conversation that they're very easy to get. I'm not saying don't use them, but we need to go deeper, especially in an industry that's psychologically driven, like sports.
Yeah.
And so when you think about the data that you all are collecting, it's not as easy to get. There's not a beautifully culled, structured database where you can select star from blah, blah columns where age equals 20 to 25.
Yeah.
And expect to get data back. What we're talking about is a lot of the deeper meaning behind why somebody might have that belief.
Yeah. And I'll give you a really simple example of this is what we've seen, not just in sports, but in other sectors. You can trace engagement is correlated with whether people will say a team is a perfect example of this. So the level of engagement to the mission, so to speak, is correlated to whether people are saying, yeah, we did amazing, or they did amazing.
Yes, I love it. That's identity. We won, not they won.
Correct.
We did.
They lose, we win. That's kind of like how it goes. It's quite subtle, but you can see it moving in the data.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely. The other interesting thing that we saw, actually the project that we worked with you all on, it was in the MLS, and we were looking at this particular team and talking about their style of play. And we had two very engaged segments that both mentioned style of play. So if you did this in the traditional sort of market research, check the box, demographic sort of way, both segments would have equally checked the box of style of play to say that this is important to their connection to the team and etc. If you look at the level of detail, what do you mean by style of play? Talk to me about what you mean by that.
Yeah.
One segment got incredibly detailed. We're not afraid to play with the keeper. We're not afraid to have the ball at our feet. We're playing from the back, like on and on, like detail. The other segment, I've heard some things about their style of play, and yeah, it is very distinctive.
Oh, interesting.
So style of play as a high level thing, you, to your point, would have thought that those two fans were the same, but they're not.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I think is interesting, and this is for the brands, the teams, etc. I think our major advertising channels are not where this individualization comes in. Our major marketing channels are where we unite our fans. So knowing who these disparate groups of fans are is important, but it's equally important to know what unites them. And if you know that, that drives your big advertising and big marketing, but that's not where a lot of the conversion happens. How many times have you been on social media and been served up an ad that you're like, come on, Meta, come on, TikTok, like, how are you even sending me this? We get almost offended if we're not marketed something that they know we already want.
Yeah.
But now, so we can target more specifically with social media, We have email campaigns where we can flip the tiniest flip in a subject line. We've seen huge conversion rate changes because we're talking about a tentpole event that's the same event. Two types of fans are going to go to the same event. But the way that we frame it and the way that we talk about what's going to happen at that event and the many different activations that'll be there, certain ones are right for certain fans. So, I mean, we still have to think of top of funnel. We've got to unite our fans. That collective is important. But when it comes down to what am I going to buy, from who, what's going to make me buy it, we have to get much more individualized, because the younger you get, like talk to a Gen Z or a Gen Alpha, there's no patience for marketing that feels one size fits all anymore. You've been in the individualization game too long.
And do you think that you would, a strategy maybe with a sponsor to a team might be around unifying the team? But I guess you've got to sort of equate that with you're gonna have a unifying message aligned with personalization to Gen Z. I mean, that's quite a difficult thing to do.
Kind of, unless you know who. So a big crux of, it's one thing to talk about consumer or fan segments as inspirational or as ways of sparking creativity. It's another thing to say, I know what segment Ben is in. Send him this email. Him and other people in his segments, send them this email. Even if you're sending 2 versions, you're still going to be able to hit them with a message that resonates much more deeply. And I'm not talking about doing anything nefarious here, because I'll be the first one to raise my hand, like the terrible basketball player who never scored a point and completely goes to games and matches for the vibes. I believe that there is something in sports for everyone. If you want to boil it down to its most basic, like take the competition out of it, take the money out of it, take all of it out of it. Do we all not agree that teamwork, grit, perseverance, focusing on becoming better than you were before, that's something that unites everybody? But you can't get somebody into that type of industry to learn those lessons and benefit from that if we don't show them that that is there for them. And we're not doing a great job with that. And I want to harp on your brand question a little bit on the partner side.
Yeah.
Because so many of them are retail, CPG, industries that are very used to having very precise data about their buyers.
Yeah.
And to date, they haven't gotten access to that in sports. And if you think about Charlotte Tilbury entering the game as a sports sponsor for the first time a few years ago, the types of fans that Charlotte Tilbury is trying to reach are very different than the types of fans that a company like Polaris might be trying to reach, or the broad reach that a Verizon or somebody like that is trying to reach. Wouldn't you want to know which teams have fans that look like your customers, which teams have engaged fans who look like your customers, and how do you do that if there's not a standardized sport agnostic segmentation that we're making? I'm so excited.
Yeah, so we're just in this has come up a couple of times very recently, actually. So obviously we get used, obviously we get used primarily for fan experience, but getting evidence that sponsors are it's worth the sponsors' money to be associated with the team. Obviously, that is a key proof point. So you need to be able to show that there's some sort of resonance of the brand or the service with the consumers beyond just kind of asking them when they're walking into the Intuit Dome, have you ever heard of Intuit?
Did you notice this logo?
Yeah. So, and there are ways to do that actually in the sort of free-form language that people use. I was also just thinking though that sort of the ideal scenario you've got is kind of like messaging to people which promotes the unifying power of the team in conjunction with some sort of personalization, because if you've got that personalization, it kind of, infers that you are part of the team, right? We know you're part of the team, you're contributing towards the greater good. And there's I promise this was not pre-planned, but so there's also a new feature capability we've just started prototyping out with a couple of teams where we can do automatic messaging out to fans based on the feedback that they're leaving.
I love it.
Okay. And it's not like, they mentioned beer, therefore we're going to send them a beer voucher. It's kind of like, what concept were they discussing and how were they talking about them? We'll be able to invoke a personalized message back to that person, referring to what they've already left the feedback about.
Mm-hmm.
And that the more you can get to that in a kind of automated fashion in time, that it's still top of mind in a personalized way, then the more effective it will be. So we're actually just rolling that out at a college team actually at the moment.
I love it. I love it. And that's really what we're talking about, right? We're not talking about personalization in the sense that you've got 3 million people in your data warehouse and you need to figure out how to send 3 million different versions of something. We're talking about, can you send 3 or 4? Are you focused on the example I give all the time, and I keep harping on the NFL, but I've had a lot of time working with them. And something that I've talked about with them is think about draft. You're going to get people to come to draft. One group of fans, you might invite them to the draft. And you're going to send them, stats and strategy and analysis on the types of players you're looking at getting and who you might be interested in and what their college stats were. And, you'll want to encourage them to think about what hole they might fill in the team's roster, etc. I would be bored to tears by that. Please don't send me that email. Again, I'm here for the vibes. So what you can invite me to instead, invite me to draft party. Invite me to draft party and show me a video of a mom losing her mind and bawling last year when her kid got drafted, and tell me that I get to come watch you change the lives of a bunch of these kids coming up. It's the same tentpole event. We are 2 different types of fans, but it creates the same behavior. You want us all glued in and watching what happens to these newly drafted players as they go through training camp and as the season begins, because no one gets it's about getting people excited about something that has something in it for everyone.
So I pay no attention at all to the NFL draft, like 0, except this year, because the guy who did the national anthem is a guy called Stephen Wilson Jr. Stephen is with a PH. And this guy is like an amazing breakthrough artist at the moment in sort of Americana. And I actually went to see him at a tiny venue in Manchester. The guy's amazing, so I don't want to make this a podcast about Stephen Wilson, but it is really interesting that I only even registered the draft because of him as an event.
I took my kids to draft party last year. I'm the person who doesn't care about sports in the traditional way, and I'm dragging my whole family to the draft.
That's crazy. It's crazy. So you and I are going to agree all day about all of this stuff. So what happens then when teams don't get this right? And what I'm thinking about is maybe that can be illustrated maybe with a pro team moving city. So maybe when the Raiders went to Vegas, for instance.
The Chargers left, yeah.
Yeah. So if they don't get it, if they don't engage with fans in the right way quickly enough, what's the consequence of that to them?
I mean, we've talked about a lot of it, right? There are a lot of options for entertainment, and people do go elsewhere. And if you think about, you don't even have to move industry, or you don't even have to move geographic locations. The industry itself is moving. I mean, again, I'm just talking data that I literally have at my fingertips right now, looked at the other day. If we're largely marketing to white men who are already big fans of sports, look at the United States Census categories and tell me which one is the most rapidly decreasing category.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, look at younger fans and their engagement patterns and what drives them. It's not what's driving older fans. It really isn't. The economics are very different for a younger fan coming in. Younger kids are not playing sports as to the same degree as they did before. That was the pipeline into fandom. I could keep going. There's about 12 to 15 factors, women's sports and the proliferation there, this influx of partners who are not the more traditional sportsy partners that have been in the game before, their degree of wanting more sophisticated data, more sophisticated strategy, more sophisticated measurement and ROI, all of that. I could keep going. We don't have time for me to keep going.
So even if you're the Red Sox,
Yeah,
established, the world is moving around you, and you have to.
yes, it's the industry is shifting, and a lot of it has to do with how rapidly changing the entertainment, economic, and technology world is. I mean, if you think about, oh my God, what did AI look like from a consumer's perspective, not from a tech giant from their perspective, but from a consumer's perspective, what did it look like 2 years ago? And take that amount of change and then compare that to the change that those consumers saw in the 30 years prior.
Yeah.
Right? Like the increase in the change of these forces, it's just exponentially quickening. And so I feel like as an industry, we need to grow in sophistication to the same degree. We need to realize who we are. We're a psychological industry. And as much as I can sit here like I'm this Custer Elementary B squad basketball player who probably doesn't belong in sports, I love this industry and I understand the business behind it. And I see how psychology plays a major role in it. And if we don't get really smart about what drives fans and get more precise about fandom, there's no customers left for us to go after. We have to continually be pivoting, getting smarter, and engaging in ways that meet the fan where they are, even though those fans are very different than how they looked before.
Yeah, I just thought of quite a good example of psychology. So it's not just about revenue. So one of the teams who use relative insight use the analytics that we produce to make actually quite a big bet. So they reduced the car parking fees. And the result was the average revenue per game either stayed the same or went slightly up. And the fan score went through the roof. Because the $10 or whatever the number was that they saved on the car parking, people ended up spending another $10 in the stadium on stuff they wanted to spend $10 on merch or concessions or whatever it might have been. And so that psychological element, from a bottom line point of view, $10 is $10, it's still the same, revenue per game, but the fan experience score shot up because psychologically that's kind of what people wanted to do and so on and so on. So that was like a really simple application of the right analytics and the right psychology gets you a fantastic win.
Yeah. And even if none of that was changing, right? Let's pretend everything is the same as it was before. Isn't the goal still, though, to increase the reach that we have as an industry? I mean, it's kind of the thing where, to some extent, if you build it, they'll come. Your core will find you and they'll come, and we've got them. But to continue to grow as an industry, even holding everything else constant, we need to be able to get into the hearts and minds of people who aren't that core. And as someone who is that person, there is something for everyone in this industry that we just haven't tapped yet.
Yeah.
And so I just want to help teams sponsors, leagues, media engage with fans in a way that gets them so excited about an industry that I think most people can get something really positive out of. But we just need to be a little bit smarter and more surgical about it.
Well, that feels to me like an excellent way to round it off.
Good, because it's hot all day.
I could go for hours on this. This has been fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on, April. Really appreciate it. Well, I hope everyone else enjoyed that as much as I did. So again, just to give you the information again, I'm Ben Hookway. I'm the CEO of Relative Insight. You can find me relativeinsight.com or Ben Hookway on LinkedIn. April, do you want to give a quick plug for where people can find all about the work you're doing?
Yeah, so you can find us at sprocketcx.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Come be friends. I love talking about this type of thing. Shoot me a message and I'd love to chat.
Great. Thanks very much, April.
Thank you.